Uh-huh. I think I found the perfect angle. Okay, no, I didn't find the perfect angle. You know what? That's okay. We can adjust on the fly. Let's do this again. Let's take reality for what it is. Hi, friends. I have this bright light that's kind of shining on my face. I need to turn it down a bit or over. There we go. This was just for when it gets dark because if I'm going to make a video, I want to be able to. There we go. I cut into the moss on the tree right there to try to put it in, and I realized that was ridiculous. Do not cut into a tree, well, the moss on a tree even, just to make a video. It's just completely not worth it. So I'm sitting here doing my 15-minute free thinking podcast without my podcast microphone, even though it's right here. I was planning on starting this podcast again, but it's been a while. I haven't had internet service out here, but you know what? The trade-off? Oh my God. Just being able to relax, come out here and just gather my thoughts. And even though driving to town is a long way, it's like 40 minutes just to get to my old house. Then I work on it, all day and then come back here. The beautiful thing is that working there for a few months will be far more than I would even make in 6 months as far as how much equity I'm adding to the house for when we sell it. Because by God, we've got to sell it for more than we probably will, because then we're going to help to pay for this place. That's just how life goes. Human beings, we work jobs, we get older, we try to buy houses, we do the best we can, we try to retire. All we want is the basics. Just a simple fucking life. Most of us, okay? Most of us. But somehow society's been conditioned to believe that we need more and more and more. We could blame Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda. He coined the term, and I think he wrote a book called Propaganda too. The guy was a genius in his time. Coincidentally, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And I always knew that he went to Sigmund Freud for psychological advice. But what I didn't know was that he actually, that Sigmund Freud said, here, I'll trade you. What you've got to do is come down and basically prop up what I have to say, prop up my words. So he did. He went and he used propaganda to convince people that Sigmund Freud was actually a better psychiatrist than he was, because he kind of founded it. But along with, the other people who had been studying human nature for forever. But I prefer Carl Jung. I think he understood it. He got the subconscious and understood what was important to people. These underlying issues aren't always about your mother, but a lot of the time they are. In fact, when we look at a lot of people, you find out that it's dad issues or mom issues that cause them to be complete assholes. In fact, I was just listening to a podcast today where a guy was talking about one particular very famous, powerful person whose dad was very abusive and scolding and always was putting him down and stuff, and him and his siblings, and how it made him want revenge on the world and finding everyone as the enemy. And I realized, of course, that's a psychological aspect. It's kind of ironic in its own sense. And speaking of irony, it was funny because I was coming home from work and I thought about this. I said, aha, I finally understand the definition of irony, as a half joke. I was like, the true definition of irony was the guy behind me. and it brought to mind a few things. The guy behind me, so, okay, I live out in the country now. I'm so stoked for it. The country roads, let's say the speed says 40, maybe 45 in a lot of places, but most of the time it's just like end 45 zone. So basically it's common sense rule. So you go as fast as you can. So some people go like 45, some people go like 65. I've gotten up to like 75, in these back roads sometimes, long straightaways. So I'm coming down this road and there's some construction cones, right? But there's nobody doing construction. It just says motorcycles use caution. Then it says bump ahead. And it's one of those things where the road has been cut for about 30-40 feet, and they have gravel bed, that goes down from the cut. It's not even that much of a bump. Let's say like an inch and a half down to the gravel, which kind of descends slightly for a foot, then levels out, and then goes back up on the other side. Let's say like average speed bump size. And so there's a guy in front of me in a Infiniti, little, small car, regular sedan. I'm driving this crap, this Dodge Caliber. It's just a sedan. And he slows way down. I'm like, okay, fine. And I'm just thinking to myself, because there's him, then me, then a truck behind me. It's like a big white truck that has been hauling ass up, behind us. And it has those, big tires out to the side, like monster truck style. Not too huge, but obviously off-road style. So when we got to it, the first guy slowed way down, and I was like, oh, come on, you can take this a little faster than that. But he probably doesn't want to fuck up his car. And I was thinking about how it's good to have a car that you don't mind too much, but most suspensions can handle that stuff. Then we passed the bump and went on our way, and the guy with the pickup was maybe a few hundred yards back, and he was coming up on it, and I thought, that's what I started thinking to myself. This is a good time to have a pickup truck. This is one of those good times to have a big truck like that, so you just cannot care. And here's the ironic part, and irony being, of course, what you wouldn't expect to happen. He slows way down to like, and I couldn't tell in my rear view, but I was watching, expecting him to just kind of burl across it, right? Slows way down to like maybe 10 miles an hour and like creeps across the damn thing. I mean, by the time he got across this 40-foot span, he must have been going 10 miles an hour across it. By the time he got across it, we were like a quarter mile up the road, and I just laughed to myself, and I thought, what's a good comparison there? And I thought, well, it's kind of like another example of irony, like the guy who talks shit to everybody, just constantly runs around trying to pick a fight, and then somebody just slaps him and he starts crying and runs off. These are real things that happen, like, and it's funny. It's fucking hilarious. Like, I think the reason why I'm even talking about irony here is because it was on my mind today because of, when I came home, I'd been listening to these podcasts today about our situation, like, in the nation. The guy who was being interviewed, I don't recall what the podcast was, Colonial Outcast or something random like that. I'd never heard the podcast before. No, that was a different one. This was just like some guy on YouTube, I think, and I just had it playing in the background on my way home. And he was interviewing this colonel from, I think he was from, I don't know if he was from the Army or, I'm pretty sure, but it doesn't matter. He was in the military for 60 years. And he had retired, and he's had mentioned like getting close to death at like 80. He's like, well, I can, he's like, I've seen a lot. He's worked for 6 administrations, okay? So this guy is like the best of the best as far as his knowledge on what goes on within not just politics, but war, and how war is handled. I mean, let's be honest. If you're in the U.S., you know that the people in charge of the military right now are just pathetic. So we have like a weird situation where these experts have been, the experts have been ousted because they don't give the answers that people want. And that's unfortunate because, okay, even I myself have in the past said, I don't want career politicians, or it doesn't always have to be, let's just say, in construction, for example, you might get an expert that's been working in construction for 50 years, but you might get an expert that's been working in it for 5 years that does you a way better service because they still care about their business, they still got a career to build, they still have a standard to uphold, and they still have something to lose, right? But another person may have nothing to lose, and may not care, may not have standards, may not have values. And that's the difference between a career politician, like a person who, I thought about this today. What is a politician these days? It's akin to, wait, what was the example that I thought of? It was like, Imagine if you owned a company. Pick any fucking thing in the world, right? It doesn't matter. Let's say you do carpet cleaning and you hire somebody to run your crew who's never carpet cleaned before. And then they choose not to read the manual, right? And don't even care how it's even done properly. They come up with their own quick theory, right? May or may not work, but usually there's a way to do things. And then let's say that that person insists that their way is better, even when there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. Furthermore, I would say, what if you hired, or what if you, there's a lot of stories about companies hiring managers that completely suck. I mean, these people are just like clueless about how, the restaurant industry is plagued with this shit. You know, some guy comes in from corporate and he's like, well, this is how we're going to do things now. And everybody's like, whoa, wait, we built a system and this works because, you know, it's fragile. And if we start breaking up how we do these various things, then people get confused. Look, we're human, we're feeble, we're simple. We don't like change. We really don't, you know, and that's to our own fault, I guess. But I've always been one who enjoys watching change happen, but I understand why people would want to keep things the same. So I was thinking today, I was at my old house painting away, and I was thinking about shit, and I said, okay, do we just become more stubborn with old age? Or rather, you know, is it just a characteristic of humans to be set in our ways at some point, where it's very difficult to break away from what we think is right? I don't know. I was thinking about where we're at right now, the way we're treating each other. A different podcast I listened to today, because I was listening to a few while I was working. They were talking about, neurochemistry and how the brain works and how we've been hijacked by social media. We've all heard it before, right? It's no news story. We all know it as we're staring at our fucking phones. I'm doing it right now while I'm recording. But here's the thing. I put myself on a diet a long time ago. Digital diet. I got rid of all my social media accounts except YouTube. And I only use YouTube exclusively. I only respond to negative comments if it's worth my time. 2012 or so, 2013, I'd always fall for the trolls bullshit. This was in the early days, really, of defending yourself from trolls on YouTube. But I learned a valuable lesson about how some people operate. The sociopaths, right? The ones that just want to scare you. Yeah, I've had death threats and all that kind of shit, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It's like nobody really seems to care about anything important. And I know that's not true for everyone. I mean, shit. I can't say what I say is important. But anybody who knows my channel, you know I'm a philosopher. You know I care about the truth. You know I care about honesty. Like, one of the things I've never done is sold you a product or tried to lie to you, right? But that seems to be just normal now. We've normalized so much shit that I grew up detesting and being told, you know, that it was bad, that we needed to break away from it. That's everything from greed to corporate monopolies to hating your neighbor, or war, you know. And I thought a lot today when I'm in my car driving. I tend to not play anything at all. Maybe a podcast sometimes, but a lot of the time I like to just sit and think about, what does it mean to be a human? You know, what does it mean to be alive? You know, should I be fulfilling the obligations of society, whatever that may be, or fulfilling my own passions, or finding some middle ground between? And usually it's something between. But I'm being honest with myself all of the time, and I'm always honest with you too. And I know my subscribers realize that and recognize the importance of honesty. And I just want to recognize you for a minute. You know, just hearing me out feels good. You know, I ramble to the internet because I don't have anybody else to ramble to. Nobody wants to hear my shit. And that's understandable. I get it. But in the past, I've really tried to present some facts. I usually have a list of things I want to talk about. But today I just said, I just can't do it. I just need to sit and unleash. It's like monster trucks and fucking. I was gonna title it like monster trucks and getting punched in the face, or a punch to the face, because that's the two ironies, back to back. And the way my brain works is I'm always ahead of myself, so sometimes I don't explain myself as well as I'd like to. In fact, I've realized over the years that I'm really horrible at actual conversation a lot of the time. I can't really convey my thoughts. Maybe that's because I'm stoned. I don't know. But, it happens. But as I sit here on my homemade bench in the woods that I've worked for, that so happy to be here with my family, so grateful for everything I have in this world. All I want is for the world that I live in to remain stable enough for me to see the future. And this is one of the main things I've realized is why society is going completely apeshit. Because people can no longer see the future. College kids have no idea where they're going to work, Even adults are losing, plenty of careers that have been long-standing. Shit. And all the people that were fired from government, there's a lot going on right now. If your life is stable and you're doing fine, that's awesome. But just to acknowledge that there's, over a third of a billion people in this country, and it's an astronomical amount of people that are all just trying to get along, do their own thing. I'd love to see that work. I think the American experiment is, as it's set out, was an amazing, an amazing idea. And looking back, nothing's perfect. That's why there's amendments to the Constitution, obviously, right? Amendments, as in, well, we need to add this or change this, because it's important that we acknowledge the rights of all people and realize that whether you call this a democracy or a republic doesn't really matter. I think most people would agree that what we are in the U.S., the United States of America, is what we were, was a nation of laws. And the catch was that not everyone has to follow these laws, because a lot of these things aren't really written into law. They're just considered common courtesy. So, for example, a president taking emergency powers to declare something that's pointless, it's not necessary. Therefore, it's not like anyone needs to stop it, but you really shouldn't do that. And I thought about this today. The idea of what courtesy means. I was raised in, God, I don't know what you would consider us back then. We were living check to check. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. We weren't middle class. We were somewhere between lower and middle class, right? And my dad was a mailman. My mom worked at Fred Meyer sometimes, but it ended up not making enough. It was cheaper to stay home with us than to pay daycare. You know how all that works. It's never changed. But all the while I was told that, all the innovation that's coming is going to change the world, and it's going to change our lives. I heard this old recording from the 60s where they're like, by the year 2000, we'll be working only 30-hour work weeks, and we'll have 2-month vacations, and everything will be automated and taken care of. And that's absolutely possible. I mean, there's absolutely nothing stopping us except greed. And greed has become normalized. And this is why when I see greed, it just disgusts me. And I see greed in politics to such an extent that I feel like I'm just ignoring it if I don't speak up on it. But then part of me just says, I don't want to talk about fucking politics. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of people don't even want to hear about politics, which is why I never bring them up. But there's a difference between politics, which people didn't used to mind that much, and identity politics. it gets nasty. My thought is if you identify with a person instead of the country, you, I guess, have really bought into kind of a, I'm not going to use the word cult, but it's very close. You know, this idea of all these red hats out there cheering on anything somebody does without questioning it. And I've thought long and hard about this and tried to understand it. There are plenty of people who are critical of what's going on in politics. Plenty of people who are even conservatives who are very critical. However, there are some who will not speak ill of the great commander-in-chief. And it fascinates me. Really fascinates me. And I think I understand people just not wanting to rock the boat and people wanting to gain favoritism and whatnot, but I didn't realize how really easy it was to just manipulate an entire, section of society overnight. And somebody was pointing out what happened. It's rage culture, but it was brought on by, yes, the early 2010s, the rise of the iPhone and the Android, and then all of a sudden everybody had a phone in their hand, which became a computer, and overnight everyone was addicted to their goddamn phones. And I know you've heard that a million times as well, but really this research was about, how it hijacked our attention to the point where we need more and more stimulation to be excited. And in the end, he was saying the solution is to go out in the woods and to spend time, fucking touch grass, right? Hug a tree. Laying against this mossy tree, it's so soft. And, yeah, I try to get as much as I can of this kind of thing. Nature, right? Hanging out in the environment, listening to the crickets, the frogs. The society that we have has trapped people in this cycle, this perpetual cycle. And, funny enough, it's guilt. My son and I were talking about this today, and I pointed out to him that this whole bullshit with the terrorist organization that's known as Israel, formerly known as Israel, it's finally been revealed to the world. I said that like a year ago, and everybody thought I was hating on the Jews. I'm like, no, just Zionists, because the more you learn about history and the more you understand about how we got here, the more you just want peace on earth. You just want people to leave each other alone, because it is possible. But then you wonder, how much does religion really play a role in that, right? And the more you look into it, the more you know, the less you wish you know. It's like an info hazard. To just step away from it is important. But also, many people can handle it without getting emotionally overloaded or charged by it. I'm one of those people who can look at the headlines, who can read the articles, and actually laugh out loud at them. Some of the things that people read about, say, Trump, I see it anger them. But I'm like, when I read that, it just fucking cracked up. Like, he said this at a UN meeting. He said this at a funeral. Oh, my God. What a fucking, But that's my opinion. And I've never been, especially at this point, one to debate why I dislike politicians, why I dislike Trump, or even Kirk for that matter. I strongly stand by my values and my morals, and I know what I know. And I know enough about people to know the people that I don't like. And I can tell the people I do like. And the funny thing is, a lot of the people I do like are the ones that are just being pushed aside. And I'm not talking about current administration. I'm talking about, this has started with Clinton. This has been going on since like the early 90s, like even that guy I was talking about that I was listening to, that 60 years, six different administrations. And he said, he said it all started with Clinton. He said, George Bush Sr. did okay, but by the time Clinton came around, he kind of screwed it up and nobody ever fixed it. He said every 4 years since then, it's just been a nightmare with the military and wasting time going to other countries, starting wars we don't need to make profits, and naming the names, talking about all the people that, we know, those of us who were, especially Gen X, that were paying attention, we remember, Halliburton and how many billions, if not trillions, they fucking made off of deals over there, and BlackRock, which now we have Blackstone, or wait, which was it? Was it Blackberg? There's a bunch of black something companies, and they all buy up a bunch of shit. There's hedge funds, and we're living in a world that's run on just money, rather than money being an exchange, okay? And to me, that's gross. That goes against, like, what I think humans should be doing with our time. Because progress is not something that can be... It can't go on forever. It just can't. We all know that eventually the resources that we have will become too difficult to obtain to make it affordable for the average person to do what we do today. I'm not saying humans will all die out because we'll just run out of oil tomorrow. Nice Jeep. I'm just saying it will be a gradual decline that we're already in. With inflation, people have been talking online a lot and about how much, groceries cost. And the funny thing is, if you make a little more than average, then it's probably, you can afford it or make it work. But you have to remember that a huge, I don't even know the percentage, but I'm going to guess a vaster, at least well over half of Americans probably make minimum wage. And even servers in the South can make less than that. Fortunately here, minimum wage applies to servers, but down there it could be $2 or nothing. And, they only live for tips. And that's fucked up to me. That's not a livable wage by any means. And so, it's important that we recognize that a lot of the people in this country are struggling hard, much harder than we are. Even if we're living check to check, some people are taking more and more loans. And yes, there are some people who buy avocado toast. Yes, there are a lot of people who lease cars they shouldn't have. And there are people who abuse the systems that are supposed to help people who really need it. That happens all the time. But overall, even the people that do need the help don't seem to be getting it. And, I should say, seem to be getting less and less of it. Removing child tax credits. Oh, the light went out. I love it. It's one of those solar lights. So my guess is that it's some cheap Japanese battery. And it was probably ordered on Amazon. My wife bought it. And, that's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. Everything's cheap these days. Now, if it was a good solar light, it would last a lot longer. But let's see if I can turn the light back on. If not, then it's maybe just going to tell me it's time to go. It's perfect. Nope, doesn't work. That's great. I love it. Piece of junk. Anyway, it don't matter. My point has been made. I wanted to complain a little bit and gripe a little bit and just kind of do some freestyle bullshit. And I may or may not upload this and share it. Part of me says, I've made a couple videos lately and I just don't end up uploading for one reason or another. But I gotta maybe get over that and just upload everything and stop giving a shit. Because I have a lot of opinions and I don't feel like they matter. But when I share them, people are always glad to hear them. So I guess with the rest of the world doing the same fucking thing and hearing so many stupid fucking people out there, I guess you can add one more stupid fucker to it. And that would be me, your friend, Carpo. So thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to what I have to say. With all the choices of bullshit out there to listen to, you've listened to me for 25 minutes of your life, and that to me is, a lot of gratitude. So here, I'm going to give you a prize. God, what can I give you? I'm going to give you a piece of moss off this tree, and I'm going to feed it through the microphone.